On March 6, 2024, Warner Bros. Discovery officially announced that Rooster Teeth would be closing its doors after 21 years on the internet. They also announced that they were allowing parts of the company to be resold. Properties like Ruby and Tales from the Stinky Dragon sold to outside companies that plan to help the productions continue with the same cast. Some other properties, such as Face Jam, Face, and Good Morning from Hell, were purchased by these creators that helped create them. Rooster Teeth founder Bernie Burns started a daily news and pop culture podcast with his wife and video game news veteran Ashley Jenkins at the beginning of 2024, and they were teasing updates and the possibility of new productions through the end of 2024. Listeners to the podcast like me knew that Bernie had been going back and forth to Austin for several months, and he even discussed some renovations he was doing to some sort of property or home in Austin. So one word that Bernie kept bringing up throughout the end of 2024 was the idea of enshittification, specifically enshittification of the internet. Basically, this is the idea that platforms and the content on them have been slowly getting worse due to a number of factors. Both hosts lamented on the idea that this is the way most of the internet seems to be moving, and Bernie kind of revealed that he had been working on an effort to really de-shittificate his corner of the internet. Then in February of 2025, Bernie and Ashley announced that they had been embroiled in a long negotiation and officially bought back Rooster Teeth from Warner. Now, this was met with resounding applause and almost total positivity throughout the internet, especially after the success of other online video founders retaking their platforms in the past few years. So Bernie has stated multiple times that he intentionally tries to put out a lot of information in a small package. The example in the first video is kind of the new logo at the splash screen at the end of the video. The logo is missing a tooth, and Bernie describes it as it took a hit, it's been knocked down, but Rooster Teeth is getting back up and going to continue the fight. He frequently references it as the battle damaged logo, which I personally love. Also, the sign of the new management kind of flickering away, obviously pointing to the fact that Bernie is back and in full control of what's going on, which has been a really big sticking point for a lot of fans, especially the older fans. Along with the video, they made an announcement Q&A on their podcast where they addressed the future of Rooster Teeth. They opened on a question about hiring. Bernie said that hiring will not, quote, look the way that you think, end quote. The next version of RT is going to look a lot more like a production company, with the long-time hires being mostly behind the camera and business positions. He also clarified that he did not rent out Stage 4 or Stage 5. They did it for the joke, which I think we all appreciated. He then went on to go through the properties that him and Ashley acquired in the purchase. He didn't name every property. He said things as old as Red vs. Blue and all the way up to things like Bernie's vlog that he was doing on the website. To kind of encompass everything, he said that over 22 domain names were included, and they acquired over 50 shows and different variants of shows. Basically, Bernie said that if you want to know what they acquired, the best way to do it is to go to the Rooster Teeth YouTube channel, look for the show, and if it's there, it's probably included in their acquisition. They both wanted to make it clear, though, that they acquired nothing from Achievement Hunter or Funhouse. Then they get asked why, and I think a lot of us kind of understood why, but I really like how they explained it. They said the primary motivating factor was because the Patreon and the support allowed them to be able to do it, and it happened during a window when it was possible, because they basically said, if we don't do it, who will? They had a big fear of the content disappearing from the internet, and fans, both longtime fans and newer fans, wouldn't have anything to go back to and see to kind of relive those old memories. They also went on to say that the logo will continue to evolve with the brand. Like we said, it has the tooth knocked out now, but we're going to see it change as things progress. And they want to put that on merchandise and kind of reflect the different new eras of the company. With regard to the scales of production and specifically new projects, Bernie said he wants people to think back to the early days of Red vs. Blue as far as their expectations go. He wants to have compelling writing and interesting characters. The plan is to do big concepts, but not necessarily in big scale productions. After that, they kind of delved into the process of acquiring Rooster Teeth. Basically, it was very long. Once they heard that people were buying back their original shows, they started looking into acquiring RT completely. During this process, Bernie approached the other founders, and they all eventually, at different times and for different reasons, bowed out. Then he went to employees that had been around for a while, and the general consensus among them was that they were ready to work on their own thing now and kind of spread their wings. He also said that they ended up closing the deal in December, and there's just been so much documentation and files and new things that they need to handle dropped on them that it took them a few months to actually make the announcement. A few other things they addressed in this initial Q&A. A lot of people like me were wondering about a complete Red vs. Blue box set. Bernie said during this Q&A, and has said multiple times, that he would love a complete box set, and that a complete box set in 2025 might be difficult and a pretty big financial risk. He pitched that it could be something with a long lead time, and it might be something that's a pre-order only deal, at least to start. I'm very optimistic about what he said and how he has consistently said for about a year now that he wants a full complete box set of Red vs. Blue. He also talked about how he was pretty surprised of the prices of the old box sets and how some of them are going for upwards of $1,000. He didn't want that to be the only way people could get a hold of the physical media ever again. Bernie took another opportunity to address scale concerns from the community. He said he doesn't know if their plan is bulletproof, but that he does not see a way that things should fail as they are now. They don't plan to take on a lot of debt. Scale is their number one concern. They plan to grow this very slowly and manageably because they don't want things to fall through. They keep repeating that they want to preserve the media. As long as they're around, this media will stay preserved. As far as new merchandise, they don't want to make a lot of junk. They use the example of their challenge coin that they gave original Patreon supporters. Both of them looked for a company that would use the least amount of plastic because they wanted the coins to, one, look good, but also be protected during the shipping process. And this took a while, and so they said it will be a slow start on new merch. And as someone who's been a patron since the beginning, the coin looks great, it feels great, and if that's the direction merch is headed, I couldn't be more excited. When asked about collaborations, Bernie said he's going to be soon doing a stint in LA with other guests on Morning Somewhere. That gives me the idea that he's going to be on maybe some other programs as well, potentially getting back in front of people and bringing in new talent for new productions. The vibe of the whole discussion seemed like they would be bringing on talent for a couple productions and then let that talent go back and do their own thing. Bernie also stressed not to reach out to people involved with RT in the past about the expansion, especially not to ask if they were going to, quote, go back to working with Rooster Teeth. And if you're going to say anything, at least use the word collaborate. He wants you to give their new stuff that they're working on a chance. Bernie also wrapped up and clarified that none of the properties that went out on their own at this point are being bought back by Rooster Teeth. This includes things like 100% Eat and the Regulation podcast. Another Q&A in March brought more updates. In response to a question about whether he would be making any more sci-fi or post-apocalyptic projects like Day 5, he consulted briefly with Ashley and said that one of his new projects called Again would sort of fit that description. He described it as pre-apocalyptic. The thing that got me the most excited about this was that he discussed Day 5 and how, to everyone that worked on it, it seemed to be an actual original idea in Hollywood. If you're not familiar, the premise is that if you fall asleep, you die. And there had been some one-off episodes of TV shows that tackled it. It was the first long production that really looked at that premise. Both Bernie and Ashley agreed that the premise of Again, which they did not reveal, but they also both believe that it is another unique idea that they have never seen done before. So that's very exciting. There was a short discussion about how, unfortunately, they had to turn down a project or taking on a project due to money. This seems like something they were maybe trying to acquire from Warner and that the two sides couldn't agree on an amount. It's not that they couldn't afford it, but it was more that Bernie did not want to make a decision that would compromise the rest of the company. Again, going back to this idea of keeping the scale manageable. He actually said, quote, "That's the only thing that can go wrong if we overextend." It was mentioned that they have considered turning on advertisements on their Morning Somewhere podcast, which comes out every day of the week, but that they would only be doing it to fund further projects. I do think it's important to add here that they've discussed turning on ads several times, and they still have not done it at all. This doesn't mean that they'll never do it, but I think it goes to show that they are really waiting until they feel like they actually have to start using ads to help get a cash infusion or make some of these long-term projects possible. There was another short lull, but then on April 1st, the company's 24th anniversary, Bernie changed up the website to look like one of the first builds of the Red vs. Blue website that was actually removed from the Internet Archive. You probably saw it. It featured a few posts that Bernie wrote for the prank, and they gave funny predictions about tech announcements back in the day, and things that, of course, would end up being wrong. He again signaled in the podcast that accompanied that he desired to convey a lot of information with a small joke, and he wanted to give people the idea of what to expect from the new version of the website. In the podcast that was released to go along with the Rooster Teeth website prank, they provided a few more updates to upcoming plans. A few new pieces of information were discussed, and it really added to my hype, and I'm sure others. First, Bernie announced that a few former hires from Rooster Teeth had been brought in to help with the relaunch, and there were people from all over the history of Rooster Teeth. This included a lot of big names from back in the day and some current players who have been really integral. Ben King, Adam Baird, Josh Meehan, and Tony Simonetta were the four that they mentioned. Bernie clarified that when talking about people that have been brought back, he said, quote, "When I say that, you're probably thinking of people who were on camera. Nobody like that. It's all people behind the scenes. Tech, IT, information archivists, web archivists, salespeople, licensing, stuff like that." End quote. Further, he confirmed that they're not using any AI tools in building the new website, and that if anyone thinks that they need to use AI, it actually has to be brought to Bernie first before they make any decision on how to compromise or where to go from there. This is going to be an exciting one for a lot of people, and I'm probably going to give it its own tag down in the description, because I haven't really seen anyone discussing this. They have confirmed that at least one of the new projects will involve animation. The question was asked of whether any of the new projects under the RT brand would have animation, and Bernie gave a single word of yes. I know that's really exciting for a lot of fans, including myself, but before we get too excited about another season of Camp or Nomad from Nowhere, let's keep an open mind. They plan on having a summer relaunch, but to not expect the lights to just suddenly turn back on, but that's when we're going to see new projects start to come out. Most importantly, Bernie announced that members of the highest Patreon tier would actually be given the opportunity to have the first look and demo the new version of the website. He described the website as being a throwback to the forum era of the internet, which was generally more positive and fun. He doesn't want to just bank on nostalgia. And this all goes back to that de-shittification of his corner of the internet that I'm really getting behind. Plus, the new Rooster Teeth will be shifting back to the old sponsorship model rather than using the first model that took over the last few years before the shutdown. The main motivation for this being the ability to directly fund RT projects rather than using other sites like Patreon that takes significant percentages of money that fans really want to just give to the creators so they can get more of the content. They stress that Patreon has been amazing for them, but the few extra percent that Patreon takes could help them fund even more. They closed out the last Q&A by saying their focus is going to be far more on the quality of the productions rather than the quantity. Personally, as a fan of Rooster Teeth since around 2008, I could not be more excited about what they announced, and especially that Bernie and Ashley are at the helm and being so careful with this revival process. They have really been very methodical in everything they've told us, so I can only imagine how methodical they're being in everything they've done. I actually want to use an example to give people some faith out there, especially if you haven't been listening to Morning Somewhere. On their podcast, when they launched their Patreon, it originally had 3 tiers. A $5 tier, a $10 tier, and a $250 tier. The $250 tier was meant to be a one-time purchase that some people would do when they wanted a shout out or would want to give a gift to somebody of a shout out or to promote a project. But after a few months, Bernie and Ashley actually realized that there were people who were just subscribing to the $250 a month tier and just letting their subscription continue to keep being billed every month. After those few months, Bernie and Ashley came on the podcast and announced that they were immediately shutting down that third tier. They wouldn't take any more money for it. They appreciated the overwhelming support, but didn't want to siphon that amount of money from people every month. They eliminated the tier completely, and now only the $5 tier and the $10 tier exist, with an option to purchase a shout out if that's something you want, but it's only a one-off. I've been a Patreon subscriber since day one at their highest tier and compiled this information by listening to the videos they release publicly and to their patrons of the highest tier. Much of this information is diluted, and you can get a lot more insight and details by signing up for the Patreon and listening to Morning Somewhere. My fiance and I listen to it every single morning on our commute, and the whole thing is a real labor of love from Ashley and Bernie. If you could spare it, I really think you should jump in, pay the $10 while you can so you can be included in this new beta for the website. Not only that, but I want to help fund this even more because I'm just so excited about it. I will be giving away 5 single months of the highest tier of Patreon for 5 random people who subscribe. If only 5 people subscribe, 5 people will get it. If more than 5 subscribe, I'll do some sort of randomizer. I know it's not much, but I want to get something out there to keep everyone excited about these announcements. Thank you so much for watching. I've been the Floppy Disk Repairman, and take care.
Here's to the future.